Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm Jeremy Langlois, coming to you live from Houmas House Estate and Gardens in front of our beautiful Japanese tea house and in the courtyard of our new Great River Road Steamboat Museum. Our courtyard here, our Steamboat Museum opened up just last Monday, and it's absolutely beautiful. Would love to have y'all come check it out. But with that said, we're going to get cooking, and I have a special guest here today, none other than my partner in crime, Miss Taylor Francis. Say hey to everybody on Facebook, Tay.
Facebook friends.
Now, before we get started, we're going to be making, our dish today is we're going to be making white chocolate bread pudding, right?
Yes.
So the thing about white chocolate bread pudding and why I had to have Taylor on this episode is, Tay, I don't even know if you've even stopped to think about this, but Taylor, so let's think, you make about what, 4 to 8 pans of bread pudding every week for the restaurant, right? You've been doing it, you've been working here since what year?
07.
So she's been working here since 2007. Yes. I didn't bring a calculator, but that's a lot of bread pudding. Have you ever stopped to think that you probably make more bread pudding than most people in the state of Louisiana?
Definitely.
You probably make more bread pudding than most people that have ever lived on the planet. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
If you stop and think about it? Well, the reason why Taylor always makes this, she has a great recipe. We've actually, over time, this recipe's actually changed a little bit. At one point we did, remember, we used to do a sticky toffee bread pudding. We used to do a sweet potato bread pudding. Now we do a white chocolate bread pudding. So over time, we've kind of changed the recipe up, and Taylor's been there each time as we've done it, just to kind of oversee it, and she's really perfected this recipe, and this is the recipe that we've used for years now, right?
Yes.
So, you know, like any good Louisiana recipe, you got to have a bread pudding, and let me tell you how we make ours. So to get started, first of all, Taylor, we're going to make a pan of bread pudding. So Taylor's going to start off with, she's got a pan, and we're going to put a little parchment in it. Look, Taylor, even got some non-stick spray. If you want to give it a little spray, we like to start with a pan, line it with some some parchment paper, and then we even spray the parchment paper as well, because that just helps the bread pudding as it's baking to not stick, right?
Yes.
Okay, now we're starting with our French bread. Now are we going to rip it or are we going to cut it?
We're going to rip it.
Okay, well look, so why don't you go ahead and start ripping the bread pudding, and we'll just, as you're ripping it, we'll do a little chatting. So we're using French bread, but they have all kind of great bread pudding recipes out there. I've seen bread pudding recipes where you use donuts, croissants, brioche bread, but this is very classic, and we're just using French bread. And now what we're going to do is we're making a white chocolate bread pudding. Now let's talk about that for a second. So we have these white chocolate chips that we're about to use, but we don't just sprinkle the white chocolate chips in there, do we? What do we do with them?
We melt it in the cream.
Yeah, so that we melt it in the cream, and the reason why we want to do that, and what's great about doing that is, I think the reason why white chocolate bread pudding has become so popular throughout the years, and you see them in all types of restaurants, is it makes it like this great custard. The white chocolate is just a perfect match for the eggs and sugar that we're going to mix in here with the milk, and it makes this really great custard that when it bakes, it just bakes up really nicely and really kind of soft and fluffy. So what I have here, so let's go ahead and do that. So we're gonna put this right here, Taylor. I'm gonna give you a bowl, and what we're gonna do is I have on the stove, I have a pot with just some heavy whipping cream that's started to melt. You could use a double boiler, or you could just bring it up to a boil that this cream is simmering. I'm actually gonna turn off the fire, and I'm going to start mixing in some of this white chocolate, and I'm just going to put the white chocolate right into this cream, turned off, and I'm going to kind of slowly stir it, and just the heat from that cream is going to cause the white chocolate itself to melt into the cream itself, so it'll become one mixture. All right, Taylor, what we got here? We got some eggs. Let's get that in the pot, and we're going to add some sugar, and let's start mixing that up. Now, as you see, normally when you make bread pudding, you would just take some milk, you would take some cream and some eggs and some sugar, mix it and dump it right over the bread. But we have this one extra step in making this white chocolate bread pudding of heating up and melting the chocolate itself into the cream itself, just to have it start to melt. I'm going to put a little fire on that. All right, Taylor, we're going to add a little bit of milk to it. Now, Taylor, as we start to mix this, let's tell all of our Facebook friends at home. Tell us your story, how you got to become at Houmas House, how you found yourself up in the kitchen, and then I'm going to jump in during points because me and you might have two different memories. Me and Taylor have worked side by side for like 14 years.
14 years, yes.
Oh, that's too long with you, girl. But anyway, but tell us your story. How did you end up here at Houmas House? What were you doing? Give us the 411.
Well, I started off at 17 years old. I started doing a little waiting, doing the waiting tables, and chef said, you know what? Let's put you in the kitchen.
Wait, I'm already jumping in. So Taylor was doing some back waiting. She was a food runner,
Yeah.
and just just this young little thing, and she was one of our best workers. And one thing that she was doing is what I love about your story is similar to mine. I started off as a dishwasher under Chef John Folson and moved into the kitchen. Well, what I started noticing about Taylor during the lunch shift was back in those days, we were always short-handed. And Taylor, just in between shifts, I would see her go over to the deep fryer, and she was always frying something, just a little snack for her to eat. Remember? Yes. And so I just kind of noticed it. We eventually got to a point where I thought you were so good at it that we were always short-handed. As we would be open for lunch every now and then, we would have an order for a po' boy, and I needed your help. I was like, Taylor, can you jump in there and just whip up a po' boy? And she would fry all the shrimp and all this stuff, and just was awesome. Just would jump in, and as she would do that, like I definitely took notice, and over time it just went from I started relying on you more and more each day when you were 17 years old to be that extra hand in the kitchen, that eventually you weren't doing me no good as a food runner. I needed you in the kitchen. You were important. But what's been really impressive about you, Taylor, is once she did move into the kitchen, she just skyrocketed, really took to making desserts, and now she's one of our sous chefs here, one of our two sous chefs here at Houmas House. She's our kitchen manager during the daytime, and runs the whole kitchen, so I couldn't be more prouder with the progress that you made here. And you're just, you're part of the Houmas House family. You're part of the Houmas House DNA. So anyway, recap us. What we got in here right now, Tay?
We got milk, egg, sugar, and we're going to add a little bit of cinnamon.
Let's do that. And I got some nutmeg there too.
Cinnamon and nutmeg.
From Facebook. Unplug it. So we got some eggs, sugar, and cream in here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to come back to our white chocolate mixture. We're going to dump a little bit of that in. Yep, we want to slowly mix this in together.
So the eggs don't cook.
Yep, that's right. So what Taylor's saying is so the eggs don't cook. Because what happens is we're adding a hot liquid to the cold eggs. And if you were to just dump it in too fast, what would happen is the eggs will actually scramble or curdle. The hot mixture will scramble and curdle the eggs, and we don't want that. What I like to do is then add some vanilla bean to it. So we're going to add some vanilla bean. And what we got here is this is our Madagascar vanilla beans. We like to split them down the middle, and then that allows us to kind of scrape the pods on the inside. And you don't need much. And then Taylor, let's just mix. That's just some of that vanilla, fresh vanilla, right in, and that can go in. So now we're going to come back over here to our bread mixture. Well, we got our torn bread. Why don't you start pouring that over? And what we've done is we've torn some French bread, and we've made a custard by mixing eggs, sugar, white chocolate, and cream, heating the cream and melting the white chocolate into it, then mixing that with eggs, sugar, and milk. Yes. Little cinnamon, little nutmeg, and we've dumped it over here. And what we do now is like all bread puddings is we take and we push the bread down to have it absorb all of that custard into the bread. Now, Taylor, what temperature and how long we need to cook it?
300 degrees. We want to start off at 1 hour. Cover with foil.
Got the foil right here.
You also want to spray your foil so when the bread heats up, it doesn't stick to the foil. So we cover it. 1 hour in the oven. You're going to uncover it, and then you're going to do 45 minutes uncovered.
And that's right. So what we do is we cook it covered, but what happens is whenever you uncover it after the 45 minutes, it's still going to be real kind of white. So what we do is by uncovering it, it allows the top to brown, get a nice beautiful brown on the outside. So now, since we got our bread pudding is magically baking in the oven, let's move on and let's talk about making some sauce. So what we have here is we have a pot that we've already started to melt a half a pound of butter into it. We're just making a very simple brown sugar rum sauce into it. So show me what you got in there. So what we're going to add to it?
We got the brown sugar. You always want to make sure it all gets mixed up evenly. You want to mix that brown sugar with that butter first. Very important, because you will have it all clunky and it won't go into it evenly.
That's right. So what happens is what Taylor's talking about is as you start to heat up that brown sugar and the butter, what you want to do is have that brown sugar absorb into that melted butter, and it'll kind of start to heat up and smooth out that brown sugar, causing it not to be so grainy. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of slowly add a little bit of heavy cream. Just mix that in real good, Tay. And that's just going to add a little bit of richness and kind of cream out the actual bread pudding itself. So coming back to as this kind of comes up and starts to simmer, what we're going to do is I just kind of want to come back and touch back on some of the stuff that I think we were talking about while the audio wasn't there apparently. But it's just been so impressive, Taylor. Taylor came in, started out 17 years old as a food runner here at Houmas House, and always jumped in the kitchen, was always kind of helping out, being just that extra hand. And I would say, how long do you think you ran food? Maybe a year?
Yeah. About a year.
So after a year, I just knew, just like I started out washing dishes for about a year, but I always knew I wanted to be in the kitchen. Did you know you always wanted to be in the kitchen, or did you just kind of take to it?
I liked it. I liked the designing the plates and just making that big, beautiful presentation. Yes.
Sure. So last, let's get a little splash of rum in here, Taylor. Just adding a little bit of spiced rum, just a little touch, and that's just going to add a little bit of flavor. We like to let it simmer a bit. It'll cook off the alcohol. Now let's come back to the actual finished bread pudding. So what I have here is this is a bread pudding that we baked off earlier, and let me show it to you. So we took this and we actually this is a bread pudding we made earlier, so you can see that it's been cooked. We baked it at 300 degrees for about an hour, came back, uncovered it, and then cooked it for another 45 minutes to get a beautiful brown on top. Now to plate this, you can go one of two methods. What you can do is what a lot of people do, just a very home style thing to do, would be just to take a spoon, stick it in there, scoop it, and put it on a plate. Now what we do for the restaurant is we actually portion it and cut it, and to do that, what you have to do is cool it down, right?
Yes.
So the reason you have to cool it down is whenever the bread pudding comes out the oven, normally it will be, you can't handle it because it's so fluffy from the custard. So as you cool it, just like a creme brulee, when you pull out of the oven, it's still a liquid, and then it chills, and the custard sets. Same thing with bread pudding. As it chills, the bread pudding itself will set, and it allows us to take the bread pudding whole out of the pan and then portion it. And that's kind of what we have here. So what this is 2 portions of bread pudding that we have that we've already taken and then cut into squares. So what we're going to do now is let's go ahead and start plating it. So Taylor, why don't you go ahead and put a piece of bread pudding on. I'm going to start cutting some fruit. You got a ladle there if you want to put some sauce on. And then right now there's so many great fruits that we have at the farmer's market. We have strawberries, blackberries, blueberries. We're going to kind of get those all around. And then one thing with bread pudding is you always want to be real generous with that sauce. So we're going to put a little blackberries on, and there we have it, y'all.